We spent the previous episode talking about evolution, and we learned how and why the composition of heritable characteristics of biological populations can change. Ideal small talk topic for weddings and funerals. But life is somewhat more complex than a single population. First of all, it contains millions of different species. A species is a group of individuals that are able to mate with each other and produce fertile offspring similar to them. For example, humans are a species, and so are domestic cats. But ticks are more than one species, some 900, that's 900 more than enough. Species, depending on size and distribution, can consist of one or more populations, which results in mesmerizing diversity. Does evolution explain this? Let's take a lorp population. They are living their lives, fermenting earwax and cooking leg hair jam, when one fine day a small group decides to move because it's too crowded and everyone has stinky breath. After a long and perilous journey, they settle down far, far away from home. This is how one population becomes two. So far it's simple. As the years, centuries, millennia, and millions of years go by, mutation comes up with random ideas for genes on both sides. Nature will swipe most of them off the table, but once in a while it will graciously allow a few to stay around. Because mutation is random, and the gene pools of the two populations don't mix, over time there will be an increasing difference in the composition of heritable traits on the two locations. Especially if environmental conditions differ as well, and natural selection makes different demands. As time goes by, the difference can become so huge that if individuals of the two populations met again, say because of another migration, they wouldn't be able to make heads or tails of each other.
You look like Uncle Bob's hemorrhoids.
They would not and could not mate with each other. The two populations of one original species have become two populations of two separate species. Speciation is the direct consequence of the evolution of isolated populations. Hold on a second, if that is so, does it mean that the gazillions of species alive today were part of fewer species before, and even fewer way before until... Could it be that all life on Earth originates from a single species or even a single ancestor? Well, according to scientific findings from a variety of fields, paleontology, comparative anatomy, molecular genetics, biogeography, and possibly mop marketing psychology, yes. A core component of the theory of evolution is common descent. But what could our ancient common ancestor have been like? Does nobody have an old wedding photo in their drawer from 3.5 billion years ago? Well, we're still looking for that. However, based on the information we have now, we suspect that it was somewhat like a bacterium with 2 college degrees tops and no eyes, of course, this is just a cartoon, and its name was LUCA. Let's not mistake it for the first ever life form, because that one lived some 500 million years earlier, if the word live is applicable at all. We can only speculate about its characteristics, but we think it was no more than a simple cyclical biochemical process kept running by environmental factors. Critics of the theory of evolution often say that it doesn't explain how life came to be. Well, it really doesn't. So what? Does the recipe for Wiener Schnitzel have to include how to assemble a calf? The theory of evolution describes a process of change in already existing life, so its validity is not dependent on how and under what circumstances life was first born. The origin of life from non-life, aka abiogenesis, was a process not yet fully understood, but it's entirely possible that it was governed by evolutionary laws, and thus the theory of evolution, in a broader sense, applies to abiogenesis as well. We'll have to see. How about compassion and unselfish empathy? Don't they spit in the face of the theory of evolution? After all, how could someone who puts the interests of others before their own successfully survive? Let's think. Caring about one another leads to a social lifestyle, and a group might easily beat challenges that are unbeatable by the individual alone. Showing social behavior is a gigantic evolutionary benefit in the long run. What we call fit from the point of view of natural selection doesn't necessarily mean strong or agile or cunning or smart or beautiful. Any trait that helps survive and reproduce successfully in a given environment increases fitness. This could very well be strength or dexterity, but so could the ability to armpit fart love songs. It all depends on the environment. Just take a look at bacteria. They are neither strong nor agile, and they are barely smarter than an average politician, yet they've managed to overcome the challenges of nature for billions of years. Because they are tough, have simple needs, and can multiply crazy fast. In a lot of situations, they are even fitter than us humans. But if after 3.5 billion years of evolution, bacteria are just as successful as the human species that stands on the top of the evolutionary ladder, can we even call evolution progress? First, give your ego thick lubrication and throw a safety helmet on it. People don't occupy the peak of evolution any more or less than any other species on the planet. Uncle Bob, a handful of red algae, and Bruce the axolotl have evolutionary histories of equal length. After all, they come from the same ancestor. And second, progress is up to definition. We are better at quantum physics and reality TV than our single-celled ancestors that swam around in puddles smelling like shit, but whether we are happier because of it is such a philosophical question that even a hybrid of Pope Francis and Richard Dawkins wouldn't be able to answer it. It's undeniable that over time more and more complex creatures have developed, you could call that progress, but not because this is the necessary route of evolution. You see, there are certain types of mutation that increase the number of different traits an individual has, and thus its complexity. In certain situations, the more traits you have, the better your adaptive advantage, which is how complexity survives. In other situations, however, complexity is a disadvantage. Living in a heap of manure is way easier as bacteria than as a blue whale. And if you wanted to thrive inside a bacterium, you'd have to become even more simple, like a virus. Natural selection doesn't give a damn about complexity, it cares about fitness. And fitness can come about in complex and simple forms as well. The human species is a particularly complex solution. The combination of our countless traits gives us a very special ability, the ability to customize our environment. The weather in our houses is always pleasant, there are barely any sharks in our cities, we grow sausages and pickle baby corn, almost as if it weren't us adapting to the environment, but the way around. Does that mean that we eliminated natural selection and put an end to our own evolution? Well, our environment we have to survive in is the very society we as a community have created. In this world, having a degenerative nerve disease may not necessarily be an obstacle to survival and reproduction. On the other hand, being a total jerk all the time might. So natural selection is still active, but it's focused on attributes different from the ones in the good old days of hunting naked in the jungle. Considering we still have heritable traits and mutation hasn't been eliminated yet, the evolution of the human species continues. Sometimes it's hard to imagine that this green sludge could ever have developed into birds or humans or a blue sludge without any conscious planning, simply by the naturally guided selection of random changes. But that's what the evidence shows. The products of evolution are far from perfect, but they are good enough to survive and reproduce. They are like a lawnmower made out of washing machine parts and duct tape by a drunken chef. Sure, it cuts the grass and does pedicure like all lawnmowers, but who the hell would design such a thing? Just take the recurrent laryngeal nerve. It starts at the head, goes down to the heart, takes a U-turn and runs back to the larynx. Even in a giraffe. Why? When it's only like 5 inches it has to cross. And why do the airways cross the digestive tract? So Uncle Bob could accidentally suffocate on a potato? And what kind of architect would put an entertainment complex in the sewer? Said Neil deGrasse Tyson. The evolutionary answer is simple. There is no architect. What we see in living creatures is the gradual summation of traits selected for reproduction and survival from a totally random pool of characteristics. But evolution is just a theory, they say. Maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. Well, the thing is, evolution, the change of life over time, is a fact. The theory of evolution offers an explanation of this fact, but not by throwing around guesses over a beer. It is supported by a mountain of evidence collected from various scientific fields with scientific rigor, and as such, it is practically a fact as well. Like the theory of gravity, the theory of relativity, or the atomic theory. Evolution may appear scary to some because the survival of the fittest and the demise of those unfit give rise to very unpleasant associations. You immediately think of Hitler, eugenics, racism, but mostly Hitler, even though the theory of evolution has no moral teachings. Evolution is not a branch of philosophy, it's a natural process. It happens and that's that. Just like the change of seasons, the tides going in and out, and growing full beards out of your ears over 30, dammit. Fitness doesn't equal crushing others anyway. As the evolution of social species demonstrates, being kind and generous provides the best evolutionary advantage in a lot of situations. If you're still bothered by the thought of constant struggle over the passing on of one's genes, let me offer you a different perspective. When you look in the mirror, you see the result of 3.5 billion years of evolution. Your eyes, your mouth, your hands and your feet are all there because of evolution. Your psoriasis too, but let's ignore that for now. Same is true for your cat, your cactus, and your gutworms. Evolution does divide all of life into species, but it also connects them all in their shared origin. We are all very different, but our distant ancestors are the same. This is how you're related to your dog, your parrot, and even to this rotten melon. All of us here on Earth are participants in the survival attempt of a speck of goo which has been going on for 4 billion years. And we call it life.